when they release the PlayStation 5, I will buy one. Mm-hmm. Do I want it to necessarily be this year? No. I don't. No. I don't have the money this year. If Sony could push it off to 2020, that would be best for my bank account. Yeah, give us some time to get
full-time jobs and,
Yeah. I want to be a comfortable adult the next time I have to buy a console. Not a struggling, like, I don't even know, not teenager, not adult.
College student, liminal
tall
space.
Child. Not even tall.
We're not even that tall.
5'2".
Welcome to the third episode of the Antepiece podcast. We're who you go to when you want to hear everyone but straight white men talk about video games. My name is Laurel Tilton. I'm joined by my co-host, Cheyenne Lewis.
Hello.
And we have some housekeeping I feel like we should address before we get into the actual video game related stuff. We've been gone for a while.
It's been like a month. Definitely.
A little bit. It's fine. I mean, okay, thing you have to keep in mind is we're college students. And there were 2 episodes that we were wanting to upload since the last time we uploaded. And one of them, Cheyenne had midterm week. And I can't remember how many things you had due, but it was a lot.
A lot of things.
It was a lot of things.
A great many of things I wasn't expecting.
I wish you guys could have seen. So I came back home to Ohio, which is where Cheyenne's at, for spring break. And we had every intention of filming a video special, and I had like 2 cameras, tripods, like everything, lav mics. We're gonna get real fancy. And then I
got the plague.
Somehow got strep throat. I still don't know who I got it from. I still have no idea who I got it from because none of my friends had strep. Like none of my friends in Ohio, none of my friends on campus got strep. It was just this weird, miraculous. I shouldn't say miraculous.
It wasn't positive. Miraculous implies that it was like a positive experience.
It was a negative miraculous. Just, I don't know how it happened, but I got strep and I was in bed for like 3 days and talking really, really hurt. And you kind of need to talk for podcasts. So we took 2 episodes off, both for just timely reasons and health reasons, but we're back.
We are back. We're going to do some things, talk about some things.
We're going to do some things. So Cheyenne, you have there's some news that happened while we were gone. We're only going to touch on some of the bigger aspects. Do you want to run through some of the release dates we've gotten?
Yeah. So, this was actually, the first one we're going to talk about actually got like announced like the day before we were supposed to record originally. Mm-hmm. Super bummed we didn't record at all because this is very exciting for us as fans of the series. If you live under a rock or only come to us for your video game news, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which is the 3rd game in like the reboot series, got a release date. It will release on September 14th of this year, which is very, very exciting.
And is a lot sooner than I was expecting, but I mean, I'm super pumped for it. The tiny little trailer that we got, very dramatic, but I'm hyped.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
We're supposed to be getting more later this month about it. I don't really know what that kind of like event thing that they have planned is gonna like be about, but I was expecting to see some sort of Shadow of the Tomb Raider news at, like I was real hopeful, naively hopeful for it at last E3 because the title had been leaked so long ago. And then we got into like the Game Awards and all that stuff. And I was like hoping, and I was like, we're going to get Tomb Raider news. We're going to get Tomb Raider news. And then they fling it at us in like the middle of nothing's really going on, and they were just like, you want the release date now? We'll give it to you now.
I wasn't expecting that to be dropped when it was, but I mean, again, I'm not complaining. I'm really excited.
I am too. And obviously this is a game we have some overlap with the games we play, but the Tomb Raider series is a game that pair of games, a series, if you will, as I've said several times, that we both enjoy, and I'm super excited to play the next one. And that's not the only game that got a release date while we were taking a leave, a sabbatical, I don't know. But Spider-Man on the PlayStation 4. Is it just the PlayStation 4? That's a good question. I think it's just the PlayStation 4.
It might be. I will look that up real quick.
Yeah.
Just for all you guys playing along.
Yeah. But while Laurel looks that up, Spider-Man will be released September 7th of 2018. September. Those first couple weeks in September is going to be popping off.
Yeah, it's Spider-Man PlayStation 4
cool.
release
Cool.
date is September 7th.
So it's interesting that like we got two very like two big titles.
Yeah.
Release dates for two big titles, especially Spider-Man, which was present at the last E3 and was supposed to be. I just expected us to have a release date for it sooner.
Yeah, I feel like this year has been really, really weird with like how we've gotten release dates or when we've gotten release dates, because the release date we got for Detroit Become Human seemed like a really, really odd time as well. And I don't know, again, not complaining because I'm always ready for new games, but
yeah, I feel
the
like
treatment of it.
Yeah,
from,
I would think that they would
standpoint.
want to give those kind of release dates to us in kind of a more theatrical kind of thing, giving it to us on like a big stage.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess in the end, like if you're sharing your release date at E3 along with 80 billion other games, the limelight might be taken away. So I guess I could understand like picking a random day in March to be like, hey, Tomb Raider's coming out. Hey, Spider-Man's coming out. I mean,
yeah,
maybe it makes sense. I don't really know.
I mean, they got professional PR teams. Maybe they know something that's going on that we don't.
They get paid to do the thing. So, the next piece of news is kind of news. It's definitely news. It's light news.
This is one of those things where it's not necessarily like really important news.
It's important to us.
Polygon. It's important to like us and particularly like me, but Polygon, one of their writers sat down with J.P. Brown, who is works with mummies at the Field Museum in Chicago, Illinois. And I don't know if I've mentioned this, but I spent 4 months interning at the Field Museum last year, and it's like a home away from home. I miss it so much. I love it so much. Like, the Field Museum is one of those museums that literally like 1% of their collections is in public view. So what you see in the museum only makes up 1% of what they actually own behind the scenes, because there are 2 floors below public access that like you have to have, you know, a Field Museum like staff card to get to. And they also have collections among the 2nd and 3rd floors as well. And it's just this super magical place. And so Polygon like sat down with J.P. Brown and played Assassin's Creed Origins with one of the like head scientists on the mummies exhibit at the Field Museum. And the article itself, I really encourage everyone to read it, because again, we'll link it down below. But I encourage everyone to read it. It does a really, really great spotlight on the exhibit itself, because that exhibit is new as of
March.
Either this, yeah. So this year. And I don't know. I was just super excited about it. And he, like, the way Brown was talking about, like, whether or not it did, like, mummies justice or did Egypt justice in the game, he said that he really liked what they did with it, but I'm really struggling with how many of these things I would actually walk through, is what he said. And then this is a quote from the article. "I enjoy this because I'm really interested in mummification. It's always fascinating to me about what people think as opposed to what we know. As a museum, our job is to try and communicate what we're finding out to people and to make that gap between what we understand and what the public knows as small as possible." Because, and this was something that we talked about right before we started recording, is just I feel like having more involvement with either experts or academics like this, where you have someone who like their entire life work is on understanding like Egypt or understanding mummies, and like having them collaborate on like playing through a game and giving their perspective on it is really important, especially with something like mummies, because historically that's something that has been like abused and misrepresented in media a lot.
Yeah,
but
it's this is something I've focused on a lot this semester within the courses that I'm in, and we've talked a lot about like kind of the mystification of mummies and kind of like spooky archaeology, and like how historically archaeology racist as hell, but historically like people aren't interested in the boring shit that like scientists and archaeologists do. They're interested in the mythical and magical and the mummy's curse and all that kind of thing. So it's interesting to see like a professional, especially a professional in like a super well-respected place like the Field Museum, have kind of like a conversation about a video game and address like that sort of the public perception of things like mummies.
And that's something that I really appreciated and would like to see more of, I think, in gaming, because that's something that I think Hellblade, which we've talked about before on the podcast, did a really, really good job of, because they not only had someone who was like on staff for historical accuracy of all the folklore that takes place in that game, especially because like it takes place in Helheim. And I mean, they talk about Loki and Odin, and making sure that that is much more accurate than you might see in like Marvel. But also they worked with psychologists and psychiatrists and interviewed a bunch of people who actually have psychosis. And it's one of those things where it's like, yes, using psychosis and mental illness as like a horror element is still incredibly problematic, but it also doesn't read so much as like Senua's psychosis is the source of the horror. It's more like this is just another aspect of how she's experiencing what she's going through. And I thought that the treatment was a lot more respectful, because they actually talk to people who are experts and, you know, have lived experiences with that. And so to see more collaboration with people who are legitimate experts on something and the production of video games to make sure that you're creating like an ultimately like respectful product, or at least are having conversations in the case of like Assassin's Creed, because, you know, I don't know how many experts they had on the actual production of the game, but at least having like retroactive, we're going to sit down. And this is where I think Polygon deserves the praise here. Like the fact that they were like, we're going to sit down with an actual expert to talk about this game.
I think that like, so definitely Polygon being like, we're going to talk to JP Brown, right? JP Brown. And we're going to like have an expert on something that is featured in media but isn't maybe necessarily featured in media accurately. I think, they definitely deserve the praise, because this is such a, like, not only is it like a neat kind of, this would be a neat marketing tool for Ubisoft Ubisoft. I don't know why. Yeah. I was like, who makes Assassin's Creed?
Who makes this?
But it would have been a great marketing tool for not only the Field Museum, because they get some sort of marketing for the Mummies exhibit, like we said, that just came out, and then Assassin's Creed Origins. I mean, Assassin's Creed Origins did come out prior to the exhibit, but still. Yeah. But I think it's really cool. Like I said before, public perception and like actual science can sometimes be divided, and to have something as especially cool as like a scientist who works in the field that you and I study in is really cool, and like having sort of the overlap of like our interests outside of that and our academic interests, like that's super, super neat, I think.
And then lastly on our news list, which this is like not really news, but more like clarification. So
a thing to talk about.
This week, there was an article that came out on this website called Semi-Accurate, which
sounds like not accurate at all.
Sounds not accurate at all. But this article came out on this website called Semi-Accurate that said that a large number of PlayStation 5 development kits had gone out to game makers. And the thing is, this website has a paywall, and the article is behind this paywall, and the pricing is $1,000 for a year's worth of access.
That sounds like
a lot of people
the Fire Festival of news.
Right. And so they were like, a lot of people were like, okay, we're hearing like, rumors about PlayStation 5. Like, is it in development? Are there kits being sent out to people? But they weren't sure because a lot of people didn't have access to this article. And so Kotaku went in, specifically Jason Schreier, and essentially like interviewed a bunch of people. And the overall just kind of consensus is that no, we're not getting the PlayStation 5 quite yet. There are people that thought that we were going to get a 2018 release. And a lot of developers were saying, well, LOL, if there's going to be a release this year, that's really funny because we haven't heard anything about it and have not been, developing our games to run on this new system that apparently exists.
Yeah, I mean, like, what were they supposed to do? Just, like, launch a console without having, like, a launch lineup? Why would people buy a console that has no games on it?
So right now, again, a loose consensus, because the article does talk about that, if Xbox steps in is like, LOL, releasing something tomorrow, they might shift their release date a little bit more because it has as much to do with where's the development process, like, actually with the hardware, but also, competition and capitalism. And so they said, it can shift up to a year or more. But right now we're looking maybe around 2020.
And I think that makes the most sense. If you think about what PlayStation and Xbox has released, like, within the last year, you have the Xbox One X and you have the PlayStation Pro, especially looking at Xbox. Granted, that's not our topic at all, but, like, the Xbox is kind of Microsoft's way of eliminating console generations. Yeah. Similarly to, like, computers, when it was, like, announced, they wanted you to be able to, like, upgrade it and all of this stuff and to keep using it. And, like, the PlayStation 4 Pro is kind of PlayStation's slightly more mediocre answer to that. And for them to have released a more costly system, a more costly machine, and then, like, a year or two, I don't remember when the PlayStation Pro came out, release a totally new system, what's the point? That's just shitty to your consumers. Like, they have to look at and treat the people who play their systems and buy their systems and support them, like, well, because as we on consoles know, you kind of have this relationship with the systems you use. Like, I've only used PlayStation. You've went from, like, PC to Wii to PlayStations, It's like Sony owns my gaming experience, basically. And if they were to say, hey, we're going to release the PlayStation 5 in November of 2018, that just hurts. That I don't know, that makes them seem like they don't care about their consumers,
Yeah. And, like, looking at it even from, like, a timeline perspective, they took 7 years between the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 4, and we're currently at 5 years with the PlayStation 4. So, like, we still have some time. And again, like, technology is ever advancing. And so we may see those, like, the gaps between generations, like, getting, smaller and smaller. But again, from a money standpoint, like, it even said that having adequate release date times is important because people, they do have to, like, plan to be like, okay, I'm going to spend, like, $400 on this. Yeah, $500 on this new system. So,
yeah. And, like, the PlayStation 4 is doing well.
It's doing really well.
And it just seems like a leap to think that the PlayStation 5 would come out this year. Maybe they'll talk about it at E3. But more of a, hey, this is a real thing, not, hey, this thing is coming out in November. You're going to want to put it on your Christmas list. Grandma's going to get one. You're going to get one. Everybody's going to get one. Like, that's not how it's going to go. But it's I feel like we've been talking about the PlayStation 5 since the PlayStation 4 came out.
I know.
And we started talking about the PlayStation 5 even more in-depthly when the Pro was coming out. I just feel like...
Let's just enjoy what we have right now. It's working.
I mean, it's... When they release the PlayStation 5, I will buy one. Mm-hmm. Do I want it to necessarily be this year? No. I don't. No. I don't have the money this year. If Sony could push it off to 2020, that would be best for my bank account. Yeah, give us some time to get
full-time jobs and,
Yeah. I want to be a comfortable adult the next time I have to buy a console. Not a struggling, like, I don't even know, not teenager, not adult.
College student, liminal
tall
space.
Child. Not even tall.
We're not even that tall.
5'2". Proportionately larger child. I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah.
But in that same vein of being a struggling liminal space college student, I haven't been playing that many games since our last episode.
Yeah, it's been like a month.
It's been like a month.
I actually have played a bunch of games, but I don't want to talk about all of them because there was like a lot. I haven't beat that many games.
I personally, so I got back from spring break, and I played a lot of video games over spring break because, again, I was sick and dying. But since I've gotten back on campus, my PlayStation is still in the bag that I, like, transport it in because I just haven't had time. I'm back on campus. I have, like, a thesis that's impending, and we're like, at the home stretch of
college. Like, I can see graduation. Graduation is, like... so not far from the horizon.
Yeah, we're in the home stretch, so I haven't been playing that many video games, having gotten on campus. I did revisit Uncharted, and that's been an interesting experience because when I went to get my PlayStation, I got it at Walmart because of a discount.
Oh, yeah,
and they only had, I know, discounts, woo! But they only had bundles. And the two options were the, like,
Call of Duty.
Uncharted, Call of Duty and the Uncharted 4, like, Game of the Year. And Call of Duty, I give zero shits about. I'm going to be honest. Like, I don't care. Like, y'all can come fight me, but that's just not a game series that I am invested in or want to even have, like use for a coaster. Like, I care very little for it. So I got the Uncharted bundle. But it was one of those games that I talked to Cheyenne about because I was like, should I play the other ones first?
Absolutely.
And the general consensus was yes. So Prime Days rolled around and they had the first 3 games like all remastered if like needed to be. And it was like $20. And so I started playing the first one and I got to this part and I just got stuck. Like, I had it on easy. I couldn't, like, beat it. I'm not a very good, like, third-person shooter kind of person. And so I set it down, and I moved on, and I literally did not touch it for, like, a year. Maybe more.
It's definitely been over a year, I feel like. Because that would have been one of the first few games that you had gotten. Yeah. And it's been a while.
So, but then, in the meantime, I played not only Horizon Zero Dawn twice, but to both of the Tomb Raider reboots, and so I've gotten a lot better at,
perfect.
using bows and
Practice
using
makes mediocre,
guns.
Actually, but not perfect.
It's not perfect. But then I came back and I was like, I'm just gonna try this again because I'd convinced myself the game was really hard. It's not. It took me a minute to beat that section that I was stuck on, and I'm currently stuck on like the water ski part. I don't know if you remember this.
Like the Sea-Doo part.
You're just, like, you're on a water ski, and there's a bunch of, like, barrels that explode.
Oh, yeah, I think...
they're shooting at.
I know what you're talking about.
I hate it. It's like I've finally gotten to a point where I'm like, oh, the combat's easy. But then, they stick you on a water ski because, of course, there has to be some car getaway scene or something like that.
Yeah,
and
those car getaway scenes. Action movie, like... I don't even know what I was going with that, but they're featured in, like, all of those games.
I know. And so, I'm stuck again. So I've been playing Rime, which was one of the PlayStation Plus games like 3 months ago.
Yeah, that sounds right, about December or January.
Yeah, and I'm like maybe halfway into it. It's a lot longer of a game than I expected.
Yeah, I've never played it. I grabbed it when it was on PlayStation Plus, and Charles has played it, but it's not a game that appealed to me, personally.
Well, it also has, like, not that it's really difficult to catch on with. It has absolutely no, like, tutorials. It has no explanation of your goals. It just drops you right in, and you kind of have to figure stuff out. And that did turn me off for a little bit, but it's also a very kind of easy game to play that's calming in a way. So I've been playing that occasionally. I'll report back on it because I've heard that there's like a very emotional twist in it. So if I finish it, or if I at least get farther into it by the next time we record, I will update on both Uncharted and Rime. But that's what I'm currently doing.
Okay, on to my laundry list of video games. I'm going to mostly talk about, like I said earlier, we're going to talk about Far Cry 5. But since you were like, I didn't really play games, I apparently did.
You did.
So I started playing Civilization 5, which is totally out of my wheelhouse. Strategy.
Yeah, I was really not shocked when you said that you were going to play that, but I was like, okay.
Charles has it on his computer. I was like, I want to build a little empire. I did that. I'm like taking over a bunch of land. I'm just not having a great time with it. I think it's because I'm playing it solo, but it also might be because I just don't like real-time strategy games. I don't know. I had fun with it for like, I don't know, like I put like 6 or 7 hours into it and was like having a good time, and now I don't feel any like motivation to go back to it, which is the theme of this episode. And then I also played a little Wolfenstein 2. I'm making progress through that game. I think I only have like 2 kind of locations left. Got to the really big scene. Ooh, buddy. Oh, buddy. It was a scene. I really need you to play that game. I think I've said that before. Yeah. So I will give my updated overall thoughts as to when I actually beat not Uncharted 4. Not Uncharted 4. Wolfenstein 2. Although, not listed on our like Google Doc. I did restart Uncharted 4 because I was feeling very nostalgic. That game, man, so pretty. Holds such a special place in my heart. There's like a sequence in the beginning that hits like all the feels. It's good. But so the next one is a game I'm not going to like talk a lot about because you and I have spoken about this like in our private lives and things that I like need you to play this. I started and finished Doki Doki Literature Club. Yeah. That was a ride. An experience. I would love to sit down and talk about the things, because there are things that I think that game did really well, and there are things that I'm like, should that have been included in the game at all? So I think that if I ever get to force you to play it, if we ever play it together, we may have to sit down and like talk about it and record ourselves talking about it, because there are a lot of things to be like thought about that game.
I'm looking forward to. I would genuinely play that one. Yeah, because like I've heard very vague things said about it, and my interest is sufficiently piqued. Yeah. So. Yeah.
And then the big game that I've played, the new game that I've played this past month while we've been away, would be Far Cry 5. So, this game it's a game.
It's a game.
It's a game. So when this game was released, I was super, or announced, really. I was super excited because the concept seemed to be really interesting, and I was really hoping that they could take it and do something similar to Wolfenstein 2, where they're touching on, like, where they're not just utilizing current day politics as kind of like a marketing strategy, which is definitely what Wolfenstein 2 did. But they... And like I said, I'm not all the way through the game, but I've played enough of the game to talk or to speak to the fact that they that the marketing wasn't just marketing. It's definitely the current political climate is like present in the game. Like they make a lot of like not like references to modern day things, but it seems very like mirroring what we're going through today. Because, you know, the Nazis and the KKK hang out in modern 2018. But Far Cry 5, I was like, maybe they can do that. Maybe. And this was also my first Far Cry game, just in general. I think it's important to say that because from what I've heard, there's differences between, they've taken some things out of the kind of setup with this game, and it's not quite, I don't know, I've heard like mixed things. Some people really like it, some people don't. Some people like the changes, some people hate them. But I just don't think that it's good. I don't think it's bad. I think I should preface that the gameplay is fun-ish. The storyline just doesn't hit. Like, they like promised some sort of thing in the marketing, like sort of like this militia thing, maybe kind of like some white supremacy situations, which is a route that I definitely think that they should have gone down. But I think they played it safe. They went with a cult. When I say that they should have went with the white supremacy thing, like, you might be able to read it that way, but there are people of color present in the game that are part of the cult, which, you know, I doubt that there are even that many people of color in Montana, but still, no, they're present. People of color, I imagine, actually do live in Montana, but I can't imagine that they would be down with, like, the shit that fucking is going on in Far Cry 5. So, it just, I don't know. It was fun for the first couple days that I played it, and now it's not something I feel super motivated to go back to. I think that, like, I will kind of, like, hop back into it. I want to unlock Cheeseburger, the bear partner that you have. She's very, I don't know if she's a she. They are very important to me. I'm going to unlock Cheeseburger. I'm also going to unlock Peaches, which is the, like, cougar that you also have as a teammate. I don't know. I just really want that. But the storyline's not super motivating. The gameplay is not great. It gets a little bit repetitive after time, and I don't think that there's not enough incentive for me to go back. So that's where I'm at. Like, I put it down the other day and just played The Witcher again. Like, I'm moving on to the DLC in The Witcher, but, like, I was just like, I should want to finish this game. Because the storyline's it's not super long. It wouldn't take me that long to beat it. But I'm just like, meh. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Far Cry has never been, again, similar to Call of Duty, something I'm like, okay, you know, it exists, and I totally respect people, like, who are super into those games, but it's not one that I've personally had interest in, and I've been really appreciating, like, all the updates you have been sending me, because I think they're funny, but I don't know. You should have gotten God of War.
You're right. I fucked up, man. I was like, I don't know. I overhyped it for myself. I went in thinking that it was going to do one thing, and it just didn't, and it's just such a shame. And I definitely think that they just played it safe. I think that this, like I said, Wolfenstein 2 really packs a punch with the stuff that it talks about within the game, that it feels relevant to what is going on now. And this being set in modern time could have done something similar and just doesn't. So it's just really, really unfortunate. So it drove me back to my one real love. Geralt, I'm just gonna play the Witcher DLCs. It's fine. Also Overwatch. I've played so many games this month. We could spend an hour just talking about that.
But we're already at the 45-ish minute mark.
Yes, so and we have a guest, so we're gonna cut it off soon.
So similar to last episode, I actually recorded with our guests before Cheyenne and I did our segment. So we will have Abby Lacy. I will introduce her after we play some nice transitional music. But
ooh, fancy.
Yeah, after this, Abby will be on. We're talking about queer and trans representation in video games and some of the questionable and just downright problematic instances that Abby has encountered. I'm here with Abby Lacy. Abby is a junior computer science major and a women, gender, and sexuality studies minor at DePaul University. Just like we did with Zoe in the last episode, we're going to get to know Abby just a little bit more and then move on to our topic of the week, queer and trans representation in video games. So Abby, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Hey, I'm Abby. I'm really gay, and I'm very trans. I work as the Women's Center intern here. I do a bunch of queer stuff on our campus. I'm a big video game nerd. I code. That's about a summation of my skills.
All right. What are some of your favorite video games?
Ooh.
We're going to keep it to like 3.
Okay. I'll try my best. So for context, I've been playing video games since I was like 2 years old. I used to like sit in my mother's lap while she like played Banjo-Kazooie for me.
Okay.
So like I played a whole lot of video games in my time. I'd say like top game I've ever played was I played World of Warcraft for 10 years.
How many hours do you have on that?
I have no idea. That game doesn't really keep track from like character to character. I think on my main character I had like over a year playtime.
It's fine.
And then I really like ARPGs. That's like Diablo, Path of Exile, anything ARPG I'm usually game for. Big fan of RPGs in general. Skyrim's my jam. I played a ton of Oblivion growing up. I'd say that's where like most of my taste falls, is like staying away from shooters and more focusing on like role playing and like self-insert games. I think that's usually where my space is.
So how has your background and identity affected your consumption of video games? I know we're hitting you with all the easy questions here.
I'd say it does and it doesn't. Where at the end of the day, if I think a game looks really interesting and cool, then I'll probably play it. But if like the devs are doing something really awful and problematic and representing people in a really awful way, then obviously I'm not going to buy your game and support it. I'd say it does affect my consumption of games to the point where like I usually prefer games where I don't have to play as male protagonists.
Yeah.
Just because I have problems with like self-insert and reflection there. But yeah.
Then what do you wish to see change in the video game industry? I know, again, easy questions.
Literally everything. If all developers could not be straight white men, I think we'd be stepping in a very good direction. It's not to say that straight white men don't make the best things, but maybe some other people can make some really good things too.
You know, maybe women would like a shot, or queer people would like a shot, or
why would women ever need to develop video games, Laurel? They don't use the internet.
Yeah, actually, we're not really recording this. This is all a ruse. This isn't getting posted on the internet. I don't know what a computer is. All right, so you have a couple games that you want to talk about in terms of queer and trans representation. So where do you want to start with this? How many games we talking about?
I've got like 3 games I want to talk about mostly. Okay. So when I think like kind of queer-baity queer representation, my mind immediately goes to like the Life is Strange series.
Yep. Yep.
Where in the first game, at least, like the only canonly queer thing is like you can kiss her on a dare, and that's basically your only option for like queer romance, and then the rest of it is just like extreme baiting to the point of like me getting really frustrated as a player, just going like, well, we slept in the same bed together, and, like, we have this really good emotional bond as characters. Like, I don't
Yeah.
understand why they can't step beyond that. Like, even at the end of the game, spoilers if you haven't played the end of the game,
It's fine.
there's an option to, like, run away with her into the distance and, like, leave your town behind. And I was like, that's got some really
As friends.
Yeah, as friends.
As gal pals.
Not to be confused with any romantic undertones that you might have experienced in the entire game.
Yeah, I can't... I'm sure we have talked about it, but I feel like Life is Strange has come up just kind of casually in, like, our other episodes. I can't remember, though. I'm awful. I should know this because I edit them and I'm also in them. But it definitely comes up. I haven't finished the first one. I'm, like, 3/4 of the way through it just because, like, I was getting frustrated. It was one of those things where I didn't know a lot about it going into playing it. But for some reason, it keeps, like, closing out on my PlayStation. I have no issues with any of my other games. So, like, I also have been playing it very slowly because it only works some of the time. But I, like, started playing it and then... I'm trying to think. No, I started watching a playthrough of it and then I was like, I want to play this game. So I got it and quit watching the playthrough. But then, because it's taken me so long to actually get through it... Because then I'll be like, oh, I have to download the next episode. I'll do that later. And then it's like 5 months later. Since then, just seeing a lot of writing about it and seeing how it's super queerbaity, I just haven't felt compelled to restart it. Because I know I'm going to be disappointed.
Yeah, I'd say, like, the last chapter was probably my favorite. You're going through, like, this weird kind of liminal space, like, things are falling around you. Mm-hmm. You're in this, like, dark place trying to reach Chloe. And so you're, like, going through all these weird kind of sequences that are, like, not in reality, but kind of, to, like, try to save her. And, like, in a queer romance kind of aspect, I was like, this is amazing if it was canonly queer. But then you also have, like, that juxtaposed next to, like, the entire rest of the game where, like, it's honestly not the best, where, like, you have really kind of sketchy dialogue and, like, rapey undertones and, like...
Yep.
So, like, parsing all of that stuff out while trying to also, like, figure out queer baiting, it's a lot to take in. I think that was, like, also a problem I had with the game.
I was playing this game, and, like, my parents were in the room, and my mom was like, why is this writing so awful? It's so bad.
It really
and
is.
the thing is, like, there's another game that does a very similar thing. It's Until Dawn. Until Dawn's got really weird dialogue where, like, Rami Malek's character Josh will be like, welcome to the Bone Zone and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, Until Dawn is kind of like this meta parody of a lot of horror movies that have terrible dialogue like that. So it actually seems like an intentional stylistic choice instead of you have no idea what high schoolers are actually like. Because there's just some... I swear, they use the term, like, amazeballs, I'm pretty sure. And I'm like, who says that anymore? Like, I don't know when they were actually writing out the script for this, but who's like, amazeballs?
You're telling me you don't incorporate hella into every single one of your sentences?
I don't know. It's one of those games that it's like, I really wanted to fall in love with, but I feel like there's so many better games out there that actually do push the envelope, like Gone Home, which you made me play. Like, I'd rather play that over and over and over again than revisit Life is Strange most of the time. But, you know, the second one, or the prequel, technically, that one apparently gets a little bit more gay. I haven't played it. I'm going to wait until there's a sale, probably, and maybe play it. But again, I mean, I'm just reading an article on it, so this is not, like, my own opinions of it, but the writer essentially said that it seemed more like their internal crushes than, like, they actually outwardly express things. There's a moment in the game where you can... Spoiler alerts for Before the Storm, sorry. There's a moment in the game where you can kind of, like, say, hey, this isn't just a friendship going on, but I don't know. I haven't played it. Like, once we sat down, I actually looked up this article, so I also haven't, like, read it as thoroughly as I could have. But it says wondering whether your crush likes you back, or say whether her asking for help when she changes clothes means something, or if it's just your imagination. The inner monologue when you just can't believe you're spending time with that one person who makes your heart jump into your throat. These things are achingly, hilariously real. And, like, I get that, but that almost feels like a Love, Simon kind of representation, where it's like, it's good because there's a lot of teens that need that, but at the same time, like, we shouldn't see this as the end all be all of representation, because that's important. They're, you know, people go through that, but also they both really white. Although it's also really great to see, like, women, because a lot of the movies we get are men.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Women can't be queer. What are you talking about? They're always gal pals. Anyway, other games hit me. What are you angry at?
I was and still super angry at the Street Fighter series.
Do tell. I know nothing about this.
Okay.
So, well, I mean, it's Street Fighter, so vague knowledge, but I've never played it.
So some historical context. Street Fighter comes out of Japan. Spoiler. So there's lots of, like, development within characters where they'll be slightly different between versions of the Japan game and the American game to, like, better, how they think, better represent audiences or, like, adapt to audiences. So that gets into really, like, problematic, complex representations of characters, particularly of...
You can't see this, but Abby's got her phone ready. She has notes. She's got receipts.
I did a project on this. I'm ready. I got the whole thing on lock. Particularly, like, Poison in the Street Fighter series is just, like, a giant mess of representation when it comes to, like, regional gender / sexuality. There's some quotes from, like, the original game developers that, like, she was originally released in America as a post-op transsexual, but in Japan she simply tucks her business away to look female. So if that's not the most awful sentence you've ever heard in your entire life. Yikes.
It's a mess.
Not to mention she's, like, even more hypersexualized than how women are usually hypersexualized in video games. Her representation in the video game, if you're not aware. She's a character that has, like, at least in Street Fighter 4, that's the game that I played the most where she's in. She has, like, handcuffs, like a dominatrix hat, like a little cane that's, like, supposed to be resemblance of, like, her being a dominatrix, red high heels, short shorts, thighs, hips, large breasts, like, you name it, she's got it. So, like, where women are usually hypersexualized in video games, and I think, like, Lara Croft, this is even going a step beyond because of her, like, I feel like going a step beyond because of her, like, transness in the U.S. version, where she has to be hypersexualized in order to be, or, like, hyperfeminized and hypersexualized to be seen as a woman, and that's even more fucked up. Not to mention, like, the really problematic dialogue that goes on in that game. Like, in some win quotes, some characters reference, like, your looks are deceiving, I'll be careful not to, like, fall into your trap, or, like, you're not very ladylike, or, like, you smell like a man. So, like, yeah, all of that is
These are one of those
awful
situations where it's like, I wish you could see our faces, because, like, just the amount of, like, disbelief, but also, oh my god.
So it's relying on, like, those two kind of stereotypes of trans women, where it's, like, the deceiver / the pathetic. It's the deceiver and the pathetic are the two stereotypes.
Okay.
So, like, the pathetic is, like, haha, look, it's a man pretending to be a woman kind of a stereotype, awful thing. And then the deceiver is like, well, she's not actually, she's just pretending kind of thing. So those kind of work in tandem in this to like represent her character in a really awful way, where it's like she's hypersexualized in a funny way, like, haha, get it? She's not actually a woman.
Yeah.
She's just hypersexual and like beating people up with BDSM items. Haha, isn't that funny? Yeah.
Oh.
Like in the game, she has a whip and you can like whip people. And one of her special moves is you like blow them a kiss and then kick them in the groin. And one of them is like you hit them with your whip on their bottom and like really hypersexual stuff. So
Lovely. Absolutely lovely.
Isn't that great? So when we're getting into like problematic representations of queer people, queer is like kind of an umbrella to include trans people.
That'd be up there.
Yeah, that's really
way up
far
there.
Up there in terms of like games that I think are absolutely awful that I've played. So like when I play that game, I try my hardest to like never see that character.
Yeah.
Just because it's or I'll play as that character just as kind of like a fuck you to the developers, like fuck you, I'm reclaiming this character kind of thing.
I don't know. That's one of those things where, like, I recognize that I've been, like, very quiet, like, during the discussion, but it's also, like, I know nothing about Street Fighter, and also just, like, knowing nothing about Street Fighter, it's just like, wow, they didn't even try to be respectful in any regard.
I mean, this is also the game where, like, most of the women characters are wearing the least amount of clothing you can imagine and are like slipping around on the stage and like strangling people with their thighs. So like doing extremely hypersexualized things for a male gaze. So.
Because didn't you know, men are the only ones who play video games.
I don't know what you're talking about. Women aren't smart enough to play video games.
What's a controller? What's a console? My
delicate hands can't hold a controller, Laurel.
I mean, they're too big. Like, what? Oh, goodness gracious. You have another game you want to talk about as well.
Ooh, okay. This one's bad too, but again, a game out of Japan. Not to stereotype, but Japan, you've got some really messed up representations of trans people. This comes out of the Mario series, going back to, like, Super Mario 2. There was a little sprite called Birdo. If you don't know Birdo, they've been in, like, a multitude of games after this. It's basically just the pink Yoshi. You know, pink and, like, with a bow to designate that they're a girl. But in the original Super Mario 2 handbook, they had like little descriptions of every character. And so the entry for Birdo was thinks he is a girl.
Lovely.
So like if you played the game and never read the handbook, you obviously have no idea. And it has no impact on the gameplay whatsoever.
So it's like J.K. Rowling with Dumbledore.
Sure.
Oh. She like retroactively was like, there's totally gay characters in Harry Potter. Dumbledore's been gay this entire time. And we're like, really? Interesting. That's not mentioned ever.
So, like, the few queer in quotation, representations that I can hold on to are not even, like, things that impact the storyline or in any way or that are included in the story. It's, like, little tidbits from the developers that have been included in, like, obscure lore about the game. So what does that even say about, like, first, how scared, like, developers are to even include these kind of things in their game, and that you have to basically play this kind of scavenger hunt to even find queer characters in video games. It's complex. They kind of flip-flop between, like, whether she is or she isn't trans, or, like, first off, I don't even know if you can apply the label of trans to, like, an anthropomorphic character. Like, she's just a dinosaur. I don't know why we're imposing our human ideas of gender.
The X-Files theme starts playing, can you?
I don't know why we're imposing, like, our human ideas of gender on, like, a character that's literally a dinosaur with, like, a giant snout. But to continue on, for the purpose of our armchair theorizing.
Oh my god.
Like, there's only one game that, like, centers around or, like, has canon depictions of, like, Birdo being trans. There was, like, some obscure game that came out in, like, 2008 in just Japan called Captain Rainbow.
Mm-hmm.
That was, like, kind of a parody of, like, Captain Falconish stuff, where you play as a protagonist, and in one of the scenes, I shit you not, Birdo goes to... You have to try to free Birdo from jail because they got arrested after using the wrong bathroom. So your task as the player is to go find an object that would, like, convince the police to let her out of jail that would confirm her gender.
Yeah, I'm on the wiki page, and as you were, like, saying that, it's like, in the game, Birdo's indeterminate gender also forms the basis for a side quest to find proof that she is a girl.
Yeah.
Which is found, but censored.
Mm-hmm. So when you go to her house, you find an object that is basically a dildo, but it's, like, blurred out in the game, so that when you take it to the police, you just give them, like, a pink object that's blurred out in the background.
So, still on the wiki page, in Paper Mario Sticker Star, the first two lyrics of Birdo's Serenade alludes to the gender confusion by saying, heart of a woman, heart of a man, both can know of love's grace.
Mm-hmm. So, like...
Wow.
Yeah, it's real messed up.
Bird's trophy description describes the character as gender indeterminate and uses the pronoun it.
Oh yeah, that's not a othering in any sense. You're not good enough to have a gender pronoun that actually makes sense. You're just it.
We've talked about this, like, off the podcast, but again, just general feelings on, like, default bisexuality in games as well is something that I think, like, I've had more experience with than, like, Birdo or Street Fighter, where, you know, like in Skyrim, you can marry whoever you want. You know, you could marry, like, Janessa, or you could marry, like, Belrond. Doesn't matter. And it has no real change at all on, like, how you play the game. You can still... I mean, if you have the Hearthfire, like, DLC, you can still adopt children. And there's just, like, no real dialogue that has to do anything. And it's one of those things where it's, like... Cheyenne and I have talked about this, but on one hand, it's, like, it's nice to have a space where, like, you can pursue a woman and have, like, no consequences, but at the same time, it's, like, do you need to have consequences or at least impact in order for it to be good representation, because that's the lived experience of the people who are playing it? So, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I think we're seeing a recurring theme here, where queer identity / queer existence in video games doesn't actually have any impact on the game itself or your experience playing that game. It's like little tidbits of information / little side quests that you have to go on to even find queer identities in the first place within, like, mainstream popular games. Like, I played a lot of video games.
She does.
And, like, even then I have problems finding characters that I'm like, is that character actually queer? Or, like, is that just kind of how I read that character? So, like, you have to go to the fringes to even find queer representation, and at the fringes, like, those representations don't actually impact your experience in the game, or, like, the gameplay, or what happens in the story usually, or, like, yeah.
Well, I'm happy with that discussion if you're happy with it. Thank you for joining us on the podcast.
No problem. You too.
All right. So hopefully after this we will have a more, actually planned update schedule. As Cheyenne and I said, we had illness and midterms interfere with our upload schedule before, but by the end of the semester, we should have a total of 5 episodes. So thanks for sticking with us. The Antepiece is recorded at DePaul University and is co-hosted and co-written by Laurel Tilton and Cheyenne Lewis. Special thanks to Jonathan Nichols-Pethick for letting us use his podcast studio. Intro and outro music is royalty-free Unreal Superhero 3 by Keygen Music. Thank you.